What is going on, guys? Welcome back. Commentary for you. There it is. 9 lore months dummy file. Proof that I got the Madden beta. And no, EA didn't provide it to me, actually. I had a viewer send it over. So this guy's face pretty much sums up my face while I played this game. I wonder how many of you strictly wanted my impressions on this. So I don't know. Seems like people will come to my video more than other people's videos. So let's get into this because there's a lot of things to talk about. And I just want to lead with the simple fact of it plays like Madden, okay? It has that distinct Madden feel where you don't seem to have any type of connection to the ground. Running, moving is essentially you just suggesting to the game where your player should go, and then the game either agrees with you or doesn't through a series of animations. So here's the deal. Right off the bat, less than a minute in, if you enjoy Madden, this is going to be another notch in your belt, and you're going to love it for the next year. If you don't like Madden, you're more than likely going to be let down. Now, I will say that doesn't mean the game doesn't have positive moments. However, much like every Madden in the past, the positive moments get overridden by the reminder that you're playing essentially the same game as you were last year. So when you have that late hit out of bounds that registers a penalty, you're excited because you haven't seen this in Madden for so long. But then the next play, when something Madden happens, you're reminded that this is the same game I played for 4 years. So it really is, you know, a tale of two different games. You know, is it a new game? No. Is it the old game? Not exactly, but what are you connecting more to? And in many cases, we connect more to the old game simply because we've just played it for so long. So I will say, the game does feel smoother, it does blend nicer, but I say that with a caveat because, to be fair, we get a very stripped-down game with the beta, including last year's. Face of the franchise, these game modes are generally missing. And I've always thought that what we're seeing is a reflection of a game that has a lot less on the back end and therefore can run a little bit smoother. So, you know, much of the post-play movement I found to be better. You don't have players bumping into each other like they're the only two people on Earth and then acting like they've known each other for 20 years. They seem a little bit more aware and not get up into each other, flip over, trip over each other. But I will say they also celebrate a lot more. And one of the things that lends itself to is, for example, the games that I played, you know, I'm up, you know, 2-3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, and I've got AI players that are celebrating. And I know it seems like a little thing, but after a while, it just gets, you know, ridiculous because you begin to think, well, you know, did they really fix this, or did they just put something in the game to appease us for the first hour we play it? So it goes right back to that initial, I don't want to say argument, but, you know, which side are you on? Are you looking at what got improved, or are you looking at what's still broken? So you are limited with teams. I will say every team that I played with, the quarterback's release seemed incredibly fast. That makes the game easier. In my opinion, when the quarterback can release the ball faster, you can make your read quicker and more accurately, and that just seems to translate to the game being more simple, including in slant routes, really burning, again, as we've seen for years. And one of the things I want to point out, and I did listen to some other people review, and they didn't mention this. I was really wondering about the zone depth and how the computer would use that to offset passing plays. So when I ran slants 6 times in a row, I expected the AI to make some type of zone adjustment with their depth. They constantly tout these things that the user gets, but very seldom does the AI actually utilize it. So I thought it was very interesting, at least in my experience, the AI was not using zone depth on its defenders to help offset while I was running. So that could be very important as this progresses throughout the year, whether or not those same tools that are supposed to make the game more balanced for user versus user end up for those that play user versus computer. I will say players are a little bit more aware of where they are. They check their movements a little bit more near the sidelines. It does not seem to impact blockers downfield. It does not seem to impact defensive backs that trail receivers out of bounds. I will say when it happens, it reminds me a lot of the time where you're running down the sideline with a player and all of a sudden they go into the tiptoe animation when it's not necessary. So you kind of have those moments where you've kind of lost control of your player again, and you know, it just seems like one of the things we constantly talk about with this game is you don't feel like you have total control of what's going on. It's just a suggestion. I want the player to run near the sideline, but I don't want him to run like he's tiptoeing out of bounds. We're on the 40-yard line. How much contextual awareness does a player have if he's doing something that he would normally do at the 10-yard line when he's at midfield in a kick return? So, with that said, the downfield blocking is really something that stood out to me as just completely lacking. I mean, it's either 100% everybody is blocked, or you've got players that can't spell football. And I've never understood this. They've actually slowed the handoff down. They've almost drugged the handoff time out, which naturally impacts the outside runs. So when you try to run outside, there's two things you'll probably notice right away. Number one, your edge players, backer, defensive end, play it a bit more aggressive. They'll actually almost get thrown off the line of scrimmage to the outside. And your handoff will be a little bit paced, so you don't actually pick control up of the player right away. So I'll tell you, if you've played Madden, you'll know this feeling. Have you ever done a play action, and before you can turn to pass the ball, you're sacked? And you look down at the controller, just like this guy's looking at you on the screen, and you understand that you had no control over what happened. That you were just simply holding the controller while the game did what it wanted. I had quite a few of those emotions trying to run outside runs. If that's how they want to prevent them, that's okay, but that's a really bad way of trying to prevent something that a lot of people exploited in this game. Another thing I want to talk about is the hit stick, because the hit stick seemed toned down a lot. And I will say, one of the things that I noticed was with the faster release, you tend to lead players a little bit more, and I thought it was extremely intriguing that that put players in that kind of quote-unquote hospital pass zone. If you search YouTube, you'll find out what a hospital pass is. And I realized that there's no risk-reward with that. You know, you can basically catch right in front of a defender, especially with halfbacks, because that's gotten a lot smoother. So you catch with a halfback and lead them into a corner or a linebacker, and there really isn't any risk that as they catch and secure the ball, they're just going to get lit up and drop it or fumble it. So that's one thing I think they really need to work on, is that risk tolerance when you're throwing into not so much traffic, you're just throwing into spaces where defenders are. Now, I will say, one of the things that I was frustrated the most by was the quarterbacks being impacted on deep passes, because they just dealt with this. They just gave Mahomes this X factor where he could send off rockets left and right, and now a couple deep passes, and all of a sudden he seems like he's lethargic and can't move. And this is really just the tell of EA and their failed executions with this game. You know, quarterbacks can't throw bomb after bomb, we know, but they certainly can throw more than 5 passes over 40 yards. Now, again, going back to what I was talking about before, when it comes down to the computer, I found that when I was trying to throw these deep bombs, all of a sudden I was having these issues, and I couldn't get the ball out soon enough, I couldn't get the ball deep enough down the field, or it just felt like my player was stuck in mud. So, you know, whether you take that as the controller not being responsive or not, you know, is up to you. But why is it when I'm playing up 2 touchdowns, the AI can drop bombs left and right and seemingly have no impact? And I think it goes back to those zone coverages we talked about. One of the things EA has been really bad with is balancing its game. You know, if you're going to implement something into the game, great. You know, that's what we want. But you have to implement it evenly. And don't implement it where it impacts me as a user, but doesn't impact the computer, because then I'm not even playing a fair game. You know, not everyone plays online. I think that goes back to what we've kind of been talking about with the franchise mode. So, to put a cap on this, even in a short period of time, you are reminded Madden is Madden. If you liked what you've played the past 3 or 4 years, and small changes to the way things are done are going to make you appreciate the game more, then I think you really will enjoy this. There's a lot of things that are good in their small doses in the game. However, in my opinion, if you are disappointed with Madden, and you have been disappointed, if you felt that each year has just been an extension of the disappointment from last year's game, you are probably going to quicker than ever find yourself in that rut, because a lot of what has changed is done so at the lack of user control, which has been primarily a number of people's complaints to begin with. So with that said, I know so many of you put a lot of credibility in my word. I will play the game more. I will give it more of an honest assessment. But right now, these are my early impressions. I appreciate you guys checking it out. And you know I will be back in the week with more commentary.